You dirty, wretched thing! Foolish, poor rat! You're not even ashamed of riding this useless machine!
Those were the exact words Alice, a heavily pregnant woman, spat at a poor female tricycle rider that hot morning as she raised her hand and struck the tricycle rider across the face. Once, twice. But what Alice didn't know was that in just a few hours, when death knocked on her door and her baby's life hung by a thread, the same woman she had just humiliated would become her only hope for survival. I dare you to watch this entire story without getting emotional. But first, subscribe if you think you can handle it. In a quiet, gated estate at the edge of the city lived a young woman named Alice. She was heavily pregnant, close to her time, and married to a man many in the neighborhood respected. Her husband, Francis, was a simple and easygoing man. They lived well, comfortably enough, good food, good clothes, cars parked outside, and a house to help run errands. But Alice was never satisfied. She loved to show herself as more than she was. She carried herself like a queen, walking with pride, often looking down on people she thought were beneath her. That morning, after breakfast, Alice decided to go to the market. She told herself, "This supermarket of a thing down the road is not far. I will walk, instead of giving my money to all these useless motor people. Let me stretch my legs. The doctor says exercise is good for pregnancy. Besides, it's just 2, maybe 3 junctions away." Her husband, still in his home office, arranging some files, looked up and said, "Alice, are you sure you can trek? Should I drop you first before I head out?" She waved her hand at him. "Leave it. Do you think I am weak? Anne, walking small will not kill me. Besides, pregnant women need exercise." Francis nodded slowly. He had long stopped arguing with his wife when she spoke in that proud, dismissive tone. So she stepped out in her flowing maternity gown, her head tie was neatly tied, and her handbag slung on her arm. She walked past the estate gate, nodding only slightly at the security man who greeted her warmly. At first, she walked briskly, swinging her hands like a fitness coach. But halfway to the supermarket, the sun grew hotter, and her body began to feel heavy. She stopped, breathed hard, and hissed loudly. "What is this? I cannot come and kill myself because of exercise," she muttered. She looked around and saw a yellow tricycle approaching. Quickly, she stretched out her hand, stopping the tricycle. The tricycle stopped, and to her surprise, a woman was the rider. She looked young, in her late 20s, her hair tied back, her face was sweaty but determined. Her name was Grace. She adjusted the tricycle mirror and smiled. "Good morning, madam. Where are you going?" Grace asked. Alice barely looked at her irritatedly. "Supermarket, down the junction," she replied, waving her hand lazily. "Okay, ma, it's 500 naira, Grace said politely. Alice hissed and climbed into the tricycle without answering. The rider blinked, a little confused, but she said nothing and started the engine. As the tricycle moved, Alice sat with her face forward, her nose slightly raised as if the wind blowing in carried an offensive smell. She looked irritated by the tricycle and the rider. She didn't respond when Grace tried to make small talk about the heat. She simply sat there, proud and dismissive. When they reached the supermarket, Alice tapped the iron bar. "Stop here," she said in a firm tone. Grace slowed down but shook her head. "Okay, madam. Please let me just drive forward a little before I park. This place is not a parking space. And if I park here, the policeman will arrest me. And that means I'll lose all the money I've worked since morning," she said politely. Instead of listening, Alice shouted, "Are you mad? Are you okay? Did you not hear me? I say stop here, and you're talking back at me. Who are you to argue with me, stupid thing?" Grace was still trying to ease the tricycle forward when Alice stretched her hand from the back and slapped her with all her might. "Pack this thing now, you hear me?" she yelled. The young woman gasped in shock. Her hands shook on the handle from the effect of the slap. Before she could recover, Alice slapped her again, harder this time. The tricycle staggered dangerously before Grace pulled it to the side of the road. She hadn't even balanced when Alice jumped down angrily and grabbed her by the shirt, dragging her out of the tricycle roughly. "You dirty, wretched thing," Alice shouted. "You dare talk back to me? You think because you are riding this nonsense tricycle, you can talk? Foolish, useless, poor rat. Her voice rose higher and higher. Passers-by stopped. People began to gather, looking at the drama. Some whispered, some shook their heads. Grace's cheeks burned with shame. Her heart pounded. She wanted to cry, but she held herself. Then Alice, with all arrogance, shouted, "In fact, I will not even pay you. Do your worst. There's nothing you can do to me." The crowd gasped. Some murmured, "No, madam, pay her her money. She carried you and you don't want to pay her. That's wickedness." Grace opened her mouth to speak, but Alice pushed her again and spat angrily at her. "You were supposed to drop me there, but you refused. Now you want me to pay you? I will not do that, never." But just then, from the crowd, a tall man wearing a simple kaftan stepped forward. He looked at the rider, then at Alice. His face showed disgust at what he had just seen. "Young lady," he turned to Grace. "Don't worry," he said gently. "How much is the money?" Grace swallowed hard. Her voice shook with pain. It's 500 naira, sir," she muttered. The man dipped his hand into his pocket, pulled out a note and gave it to her. "Here, take this, and keep the change. Forget about her, leave this troublesome woman alone." Alice's eyes blazed. "How dare you call me troublesome?" She barked. "Do you know who I am? And who the hell do you think you are? You think I don't have the money to pay her? I have. But I will not pay. Don't think because you're standing here you can insult me, stupid man." She turned on him, raining insults and curses. The man simply stepped back into the crowd and shook his head in pity. Grace, trembling from the humiliation, clutched the money and nodded at him with watery eyes. "Thank you, sir," she whispered softly. She turned to her tricycle. Her legs shook as she stepped in, started it quickly and drove off. The crowd began to disperse, shaking their heads. Some muttered, "Very proud, arrogant woman. Pride goes before a fall. May it not be your end one day. God sees all." But Alice fired back angrily. "It is you people that pride will end, not me. God forbid." She stood there proudly, adjusting her gown as if nothing had happened. "Rubbish," she muttered under her breath. She raised her chin, walked into the supermarket, and did her shopping. To her, she had won. She had proven she was above them all. She had put that tricycle rider in her place. She smiled victoriously, but little did she know that life was already arranging her own lesson. When Alice finished buying things at the supermarket, she returned home still puffed and filled with pride. She told herself she had shown that rider her place. She even smiled as she recounted the drama in her head. "Imagine that poor dirty woman trying to talk back to me. Who does she think she is? At least now she knows there are levels in life. And we are not the same." She walked into her house, dropped her shopping bags, and called the house help to arrange them. Her husband was still upstairs in his home office, unaware of the drama she had just caused outside. But life, they say, is like a drum. You never know which side will sound next. Not long after Alice sat to rest, she felt a sharp pain tear through her belly. She gasped and tried to stand. The pain came again, stronger than before. Then with a sudden gush, her water broke. "Jesus, Francis, Francis," she screamed her husband's name, her voice filled with panic. Her husband ran downstairs. His shirt was half buttoned and files still in his hand. The sight froze him. Water was pooling at her feet, and she clutched her stomach, screaming, "My God, Alice, it's labor. You're in labor, but you're not due yet. How can you?" Francis's voice shook. "Don't just stand there. Do something," Alice cried. "Take me to the hospital. The pain is unbearable." Francis threw the files he was holding aside, scooped her to his arms, rushed her to the car outside, and helped her into the back seat. His hands shook as he tried to start the car, but that was when the nightmare began. Francis turned the key once. Nothing. He turned it again. Still. Silence. "God, please," he shouted, banging the steering wheel. He tried and tried, but the car refused to start. He ran into another of his cars and turned on the ignition. And just like a curse, it also refused to start. He tried the others parked. The same thing. Alice screamed louder, gripping her stomach in pain. Sweat poured down her face. "Francis, I can't bear this pain any longer. Do something," she yelled. "Hold on, Alice, hold on," he said, his voice trembled. He pulled out his phone and opened the Uber app. He prayed silently that a driver would be nearby, but when the map loaded, the nearest driver was 30 minutes away. 30 minutes, he muttered in despair. That's too long. Alice can't wait. His wife screamed again, louder this time, her nails dug into the car seat. Francis, you want me to die here? Francis dropped the phone, jumped out of the car, and ran to the gate. He waved desperately at passing taxis. Please, stop, my wife is in labor. Please help us get to the hospital. But one after the other they zoomed past. Some were already carrying passengers, some simply didn't want the stress. Francis's heart pounded, his wife's cries echoed behind him. He thought of running to the estate clinic, but it was too far. But just then, as if heaven heard his cries, a tricycle approached slowly from the junction. He waved with both hands, shouting, "Please stop! Please stop!" The tricycle slowed down and pulled to the side, and when Francis ran to it, his heart skipped. It was a woman, a female rider. The rider's eyes widened when she saw Francis's desperate face. "What is it, sir?" "You look like you need urgent help," she asked quickly. "Yes, my wife, she's in labor. My car refused to start. Uber is too far. Please, please, I beg you, come and help me carry her to the hospital." The rider looked at him, then at the passengers already sitting at the back. She didn't waste time. She turned to them. "Please, my passengers, don't be offended. I beg you, this man's wife is in labor. I need to take them to the hospital. Please forgive me, and don't be angry. You can board another tricycle from here." She quickly returned their money and helped them out. They didn't argue. They only nodded and muttered, "God bless you. You have a kind heart," before boarding another tricycle. Francis almost cried. "Thank you, God bless you," he appreciated as he got into the back seat. The rider followed him through the estate gate into his compound. But the moment they stepped into the house, thunder struck in silence. She couldn't believe who she was seeing. On the living room couch, groaning in pain, was the same woman who had insulted, called her useless, and even gave her 2 resounding slaps earlier that morning. And in that moment, Alice was also shocked to see who just walked into her house. Their eyes met. Alice froze. She blinked twice, thinking it was her imagination. But no, it was the same tricycle rider she had slapped and disgraced not too long ago. It was Grace. Before anyone could even say a word, she exploded in her arrogance again. "What? You devil, you wretched thing! Francis, why will you bring this nonsense woman into my house?" Francis was stunned, looking totally confused. "What are you saying?" "She came to help us. She's the only reason we can even get to the hospital now," he muttered. "No, I will not enter her dirty tricycle again. Never!" Alice spat, her face twisted in arrogance, even in pain. "Her filthy hands will not touch me, not when I am still breathing." Grace's face grew dark. She clenched her fists as she spoke. "Sir, I am leaving. I didn't come here to be insulted twice, so this arrogant woman is your wife. Do you know what she did to me this morning? She slapped me, refused to pay me, and disgraced me in public. Now she's still insulting me again? She's not even remorseful. I'm done and I'm not helping. Please sort yourself." She turned to walk out, but Francis ran after her. "No, please," he begged, his hands almost touching the floor. "Forgive her. I know my wife can be hot-tempered, but please, think of the baby. Help us for the child's sake. I'm begging you." But Alice's voice rose again. "Shut up, useless man. Always begging. Let her leave. You are even apologizing to this dirty thing. Instead of fighting for me, you are kneeling to beg her. Weakling. You're always a weakling." Grace stopped at the door. Her chest rose and fell with anger. Her heart told her to leave, to let this arrogant woman suffer in her pride. And if she wants to die, let her die. She deserved it. But just then, as she walked towards the door, she heard Alice's scream again, louder than before. This time, her cry wasn't only of pride, it was of pain, fear, and desperation. The cry of an ordinary woman wailing from the pain of nature's torture. Even their maid panicked at her madam's scream. Grace turned slowly. She looked at Alice's face, twisted in agony. She looked at Francis, with tears in his eyes, trembling like a child. Then she closed her eyes and whispered, This isn't about her. This is about that innocent baby." She walked back. Her voice was cold but firm as she spoke. "I'm not helping you because of you. I'm only helping because of the innocent child that doesn't know anything." With that, she helped Francis lift Alice from the couch, and they took her into the tricycle carefully. Alice turned her face away, still dripping in her pride, even in pain, but too weak to resist. Grace started the engine and drove fast, rushing through traffic. Her heart raced. Francis sat at the back, holding his wife, whispering prayers as Alice screamed in pain. At last, they arrived at the hospital gate. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher. Alice was wheeled inside, leaving Francis and Grace in the waiting room. Francis turned to the young woman with tears still in his eyes. "Thank you. God will bless you. I don't even know how to repay you." Grace nodded quietly. "Just pray for your wife. That is enough." But deep inside, she wondered if a woman like that would ever change. But little did she know that a bigger twist was waiting just around the corner. As they waited, Alice's voice rose and fell in waves of pain. Nurses and doctors moved quickly around her, urging her to push, urging her to hold on. Her face was soaked with sweat, her hair clung to her skin, and her arrogance earlier that day had vanished completely in the fire of labor. Outside, her husband still paced back and forth, wringing his hands. He could barely sit. Every cry from his wife tore at his heart. "God, please," he muttered under his breath. "Save my wife. Save my child." Beside him, Grace sat quietly. She had been through insults, humiliation, and disrespect from Alice. Yet she stayed. Something in her heart refused to let her leave. She watched the man's fear. She heard the woman's cries, and deep down she knew she had been positioned to meet the arrogant woman that day for a reason. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours. Finally, the doors of the labor ward opened, and a doctor stepped out, smiling. "Congratulations, sir," he said warmly. "Your wife has delivered safely. It is a bouncing baby boy." Francis's knees almost gave way. His face lit up with tears of joy. "Thank you, Lord." "Thank you," he praised. He grabbed the doctor's hands, then turned quickly to Grace. In a rush of excitement, he hugged her tightly. "You don't know what you have done for me today," he said, still shaking. "God will bless you. Thank you. I can never forget this kindness." Grace smiled faintly, blinking back tears. She had no words, only gratitude that both mother and child were alive. Soon they were ushered into the ward. Alice lay on the bed, weak and pale but alive. Her baby rested in her arms. For the first time that day, her eyes held no fire of pride. Instead, they shone with a quiet heaviness and brokenness. Grace stepped forward slowly, almost unsure if she should enter. But Alice's eyes met hers, and something strange happened. Tears welled up in Alice's eyes, and to everyone's greatest shock. She whispered softly in a shaky voice, "Thank you." Grace blinked, almost thinking she had misheard her. Wait, did she just? Or she didn't hear her right? But she waved it off, thinking it wasn't what it sounded like. Alice clutched her baby tighter and continued. When I was on that bed, I felt like I was between life and death. I almost gave up. But at that moment, at that last moment, I saw your face. And then I heard a voice in my heart. It told me, if not for this girl's kindness, today would have been your end. Her lips trembled. Tears welled up in her eyes as she spoke. She sobbed and continued, "I was wrong. I was arrogant, and I am so sorry for the way I treated you earlier." At this moment, tears spilled down her cheeks. The proud, rich woman who had once looked down on others was now humbled. The room fell silent. Even her husband, Francis, stared at her in shock, hardly believing she was apologizing. Grace's eyes were also filled with tears. She couldn't believe what she was hearing. Alice, apologizing to her? In reality, it was really an emotional moment. She had endured shame and insult, but here was a woman broken by her own experience, confessing openly. Alice lifted her eyes again. "Please forgive me," she said again. "My pride blinded me. I thought money and position made me better than people like you. But today I have learnt a lesson I will never forget in my life." Francis was moved deeply. He lifted his eyes, grateful for that one encounter that affected his wife and changed her for good. He turned to Grace and bowed his head slightly. "On behalf of my wife, please find it in your heart to forgive her for what she'd done. I truly apologize. I know sorry is not enough, but I am grateful beyond words for what you did today. You saved 2 lives, my wife and my child. Thank you so much." Grace shook her head gently. "I didn't do it for her, sir," she muttered. "I did it for the innocent child. But I forgive her." This moment, Alice broke down completely, sobbing quietly, whispering prayers of thanks. Francis reached into his pocket, brought out a neat business card, and handed it to the young woman. "Please," he said firmly, "come and see me at my office next week, Monday. Don't fail, and I will also like to pay you the money she didn't pay earlier." But Grace shook her head immediately. "No, sir," she said. "Someone already settled that." "Okay. Please, have my card." Francis stretched out his hand. "This is not just about the money she refused to pay. Someone already settled that, I know. But this is bigger. I want to show you how much I appreciate what you did for my family today." Grace hesitated, staring at the card. For a moment she wanted to refuse, but Francis looked at her with pleading eyes. She nodded calmly, then finally took it and whispered, "Thank you, sir." Francis smiled through his tears. "No, I should be thanking you for everything you did for us. Thank you." He turned to his wife and smiled gently. As the baby let out a soft cry, everyone turned. Grace stepped closer, looked at the child, and gave a small smile. Alice stared into the face of the woman who had saved her from dying out of arrogance that day. And for the first time since in the morning, she managed a weak but genuine smile. The following Monday, Grace stood in front of a towering glass building. The name of the company gleamed on the wall in bold letters. She held the business card tightly in her hand, her heart raced. She had never stepped into such a place before. For a moment, she almost turned back. "What am I doing here? This can't be for someone like me," she whispered. But then something she couldn't explain stopped her. She took a deep breath and pushed herself through the wide glass doors. At the reception, the young lady on duty took one glance at the card and immediately straightened her posture. Without asking further questions, she led Grace upstairs to the top floor. As soon as the elevator doors opened, the receptionist told her, "Please, go in. The CEO is expecting you already." Grace swallowed the lump in her throat and knocked. Then she pushed the door. The moment it opened, her eyes widened. Sitting there, with a broad smile, was none other than Francis, Alice's husband. She stopped dead in her tracks. You're the CEO?" she stammered. Francis nodded with a warm smile. "Yes, I am." "Welcome." Her knees almost buckled. She had helped him in desperation, thinking he was just another troubled husband. Never in her life did she imagine that the man she carried in her tricycle, the man who begged her with tears in his eyes, was the CEO of this mighty company. "You came," he said kindly, extending his hand. "Please, sit." She stared at the spacious office. Her palms became wet with sweat. Her eyes glanced around in disbelief. Francis looked at her carefully, then spoke gently again. "How have you been?" he asked. "Fine, thank you, sir." "How is your wife and the baby?" she asked softly. "They are fine, all thanks to God, and to you. By the way, what is your name?" he finally asked. "My name is Grace, sir," she answered quietly. He smiled. "Grace, a beautiful name. That day at the hospital, God's grace was shown through you to my family." She lowered her gaze, trying to hold back tears. "Tell me," he continued gently, "why are you riding a tricycle? Are you a graduate?" "I am, sir. I graduated 4 years ago. I searched everywhere for a job, but no one helped me. Some wanted favors I could not give, others tried to take advantage of me. I refused, so I bought a tricycle on hire purchase. At least it fed me, but it has not been easy." For a long moment, Francis was silent. Then he leaned forward, his voice was calm but firm. "Grace, your story touches me. You had every reason to walk away from my wife that day, but you chose compassion. And that one choice saved her life, and my son's life. I will never forget. He opened a drawer and brought out a file. Sliding it across the table, he said, "From today, you are no longer a tricycle rider. I want you to work in my company. This file contains your appointment letter as my personal assistant in charge of special projects. Your starting salary is 500,000 naira a month, plus housing allowance. You will also be assigned an official car." Grace froze. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. Tears blurred her vision as she placed both hands on her chest. "Sir, me? A tricycle rider?" she stammered, unable to believe what she just heard. Francis shook his head firmly. "No, not just a tricycle rider. You are a graduate, a woman of integrity, and above all, a woman of kindness. It's time the world sees you for who you truly are." Joy overflowed in Grace's heart. She wept openly, overwhelmed at how quickly her story just changed. She couldn't hold back her tears. But this time, they weren't tears of pain or suffering or humiliation anymore. They were tears of unexpected joy. One moment she was driving a tricycle on the hot streets, insulted and mocked. Now she was stepping into a new life of dignity and honor, all because she chose kindness when she could have walked away. And from that day, her life changed forever. Friends, this is not just a story. It is a lesson for us all. A young woman who once drove a tricycle to survive was lifted into a position of honor, not because she begged, bribed, or compromised, but because of her kindness and integrity. Never despise anyone that is suffering and trying to survive genuinely, because tomorrow is pregnant with surprises. Kindness is never wasted, it always comes back in ways you least expect. But pride and arrogance could endanger you a lot, even your own life, just like it almost cost Alice's. Remember that a good heart is greater than riches. Riches may finish, but a good heart will always open another path. If you were touched by this story, don't just watch it alone. Share it with someone today. Leave a comment about the lesson you learned, and most importantly, subscribe to Roots of the African Tales for more inspiring African stories that carry wisdom in our everyday life. Stay humble, stay kind, and see you in the next story.